Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Relationship Success Support. We do these hangouts about once a month, and we're busy working a series on how to create an effective relationship, whether you are already in a relationship or whether you're not yet in a relationship or you would like to be in one. And as always, we invite and we encourage you to participate in the discussion and ask questions to the panel or share your comments. To do that, you have to go to our Google Plus page, the event page, and there you can type in your question or your comment if you're watching this live. If not, you can put your question or your comment in the YouTube comment section after the Hangout has been uploaded. All right, so for today's Hangout, we are talking about gender roles versus masculine and feminine expression. And to talk about this, we have, as always, our resident relationship expert, Ms. Cerise Pullman. Hi, Cerise.
Hey, Anna.
And today we are joined by two relationship experts, I would say, specializing in male-female dynamics. And that is Maite and LJ, also from South Africa. Hi, guys.
Hi.
All right, so we're going to start off by talking a little bit about gender roles, the male and female gender roles that a lot of us tend to go into on a daily basis, and how these can be very limiting for our relationships, and how we go into these various polarities and play these games in our relationships. And then from there, we're going to have a look at how we can sort of turn these limits or limitations into strengths, and how we can actually utilize the differences between the masculine expression and the feminine expression within ourselves and in each other to support our relationship and ourselves to grow and expand. So let's first start by looking at gender roles. How about we start looking at the role of the man, the male? What would you guys say? Like, how about we start with you, LJ? What are some typical male gender roles that you found in your own life?
Well, for me, it was a matter of having to act strong, not truly show my emotions, or anything like that. That was the characteristics that I picked up that I was supposed to show, and that I have to be a provider and walk that point of stability and strength for my wife and family.
Yeah, there is this very distinct, we talked about it before we started, that it's very limiting, it's very, like, every male on the entire planet, maybe besides some few weird indigenous groups, like, they have the exact same expectations. What have you guys found, Maite and Cerise, in relation to male gender roles?
Okay. Okay, so LJ mentioned the points of not showing emotion and having to be strong for the people around them, as well as then being the financial, let's call it structural and physical support for the family in terms of providing an income, making sure that there's a roof over everyone's head, food on the table. Aside from that, we've got some stereotypes like men really like cars and electronic toys and things like that.
Violence, even.
Yeah, men are aggressive and violent. Men have tempers. They can get angry quite easily. Anna, we've lost you for a moment. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, all right. Some other stereotypes. Let's see, what were the other ones?
You also have the expression in relation to what you were saying, LJ, be a man, and how especially, young boys, and I know that scientists, they even discuss it, they even discuss it nowadays, where they're like, but we don't impose those old-fashioned gender roles on the children, and yet boys somehow still grow up learning, like for example, that they cannot ask for help or they shouldn't show their emotions. Is that something that you have found as well, Maite?
Hmm. Well, I think even if they've been trying to make an effort to not instill those stereotypes, I mean, they're kind of still all around you. I mean, if you look at movies, if you look at stories, if you look at fairy tales, it's always the prince on the white horse coming to save the woman and, saving her. And, I mean, you see it everywhere still. So even if as a parent, um, you try to, how do you say it, give a gender neutral education and values, I mean, it's still very ingrained. And yeah, so I don't think it's surprising that we still have that same repetition of boys growing up into the male stereotype and girls growing up into the female stereotype.
How about the physical appearance of males? Do you also find that there are some stereotypes there of how males or men are supposed to be or look?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when you look at how the different forms of media portray the ideal man, all of the other men feel like they should be somehow trying to live up to that picture, just like females and looking up to supermodels and trying to look like supermodels. Um, Guys go through exactly the same thing. Depending on whatever the fashion is of the day, whether it's metrosexual or being a big, strong, macho man, having muscles or not having muscles or whatever it is. I mean, when a guy finds themselves not looking the way that they apparently should look according to what they are seeing around them, that opens up the potential for them to develop some very serious self-esteem issues and self-image problems because they are not according to their beliefs. What they don't look how they should look. They don't look like what other people want them to look like.
And at the same time, they're not expected to talk about it or care because they're not supposed to be emotional about these things.
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, for sure. So, LJ, is this something that you've experienced in your own life, like how without really knowing it, kind of found yourself being limited by a certain gender role in being a man or being a boy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was even in school. You feel it from other kids always teasing the fat kids. It's the same principle goes for guys, and you can't talk to your friends in terms of for guys. You can't talk to your friends about if you look bad or feel bad about the way you look or anything like that. Because it's not a guy thing to do. It's the whole be a man principle stands there. You can't talk to a friend and say, "Well, I don't feel like I look good in these clothes." Does it really suit me? You can't ask a guy that.
Do I look fat in this?
Yeah, basically. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a lot of guys go through the same point where they don't feel comfortable or they don't feel like they're living up to that image, and they can't talk to other guys about it because it's just not a thing that guys do.
Yeah, I was looking at some, like, what if we look at like the most extreme, severe consequences of this. For example, that it's very common that males who are raped or males who are exposed to domestic abuse from their female partners, like that is so much of a taboo that they don't report it, they don't seek help, they don't talk to anyone about it. And then I was also looking at like soldiers, because they are, the whole war system is, that's primarily males that are being exposed to that, and how this whole, we've been hearing a lot about PTSD over the past few years, and how bad it tends to get. So would you say that these like extreme cases, is that related to the gender role of being male?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're absolutely right. It's like a vicious cycle where the general male population is just kept trapped in this loop of being unable to change their experiences because they feel restricted in how they can deal with what they are experiencing within themselves. And that, I mean, things like that, suppressing all of that emotional, all of those emotional experiences can lead to some serious consequences, side effects later on in life. I mean, let's take, for example, domestic abuse. If a man feels unable to deal with his emotions because he has no opportunities to do so, he feels limited in how he can do it, he feels like he shouldn't deal with them, what else is he supposed to do, you know? A man will then end up in a position where they have these emotions within them and they need to try and find an outlet. And things like that is what opens the door for domestic violence, for men to act out their aggression and their violence on the people closest to them simply because they don't know how otherwise to deal with it. And there is no support structure. And apparently, according to their belief and everyone else's belief, that is preferable to changing this norm of not talking about your feelings and creating a more healthy state of being.
Yeah, you know what also tends to happen in those situations, not that we're going to just go into that deeper, but is that in domestic violence situations where the man is the one that's violent, it tends to be the woman that is removed and, you know, receives help, which of course she should have. But the male is, you know, more like criminalized, like, you know, he just did something wrong and he's not okay to do that. But what is it that we see is that, of course, the cycles continue. You know, just because you remove the woman doesn't mean that his issues are solved. So that's quite a shame, really. But that let's Maite, did you want to add something before we go on to the female gender role?
No, nothing. Well, one thing that I experienced that I was looking for in the male stereotype was the idea that the man will know how to do things. Like, he will know how to fix a tap. He will know how to connect the TV to this. And also more in general, like, he will know how to submit taxes, and
Right.
there you have to go and apply for these forms for that purpose, because I didn't do that stuff. So yeah, that's another one of those things, like kind of expecting the man to be aware, to know about everything that's happening in the world also, and to just be able to navigate me through everything.
So what did you find happen as a consequence of you thinking that? Like what was the outflow of that way of thinking?
Well, I would just accept whatever my boyfriend was saying. I didn't even check if it was true, you know. And well, I never even investigated for myself. I was just like, okay, he has an opinion about this. It's fine. We're good. He thinks we should do that. Okay, he's got an idea. That's fine. I don't have to do anything. But this was more, you know, in previous relationships. Because yeah, later on I started to look at these things for myself. But yeah, in terms of relationships and stuff like that, if I had continued down that path, I can imagine I would be in serious trouble. Kind of like expecting the guy to take care of all the finances, all the legal stuff, all the everything, and then totally being unaware and totally ignorant of what's happening and what the consequences are. And then I can imagine one day just kind of like being served with the consequences, and I'll go, but how did this happen? And you know, just not taking any responsibility for any of those things.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, there are so many dimensions in this, but one dimension, and it's not to say that that's the only dimension, but one dimension is that we as females kind of become complacent in that, you know, in kind of just leaning on the male. And then you lean so much that if he moves, you're gonna fall, right? Because you weren't standing on your own 2 feet. And I've definitely experienced this, and like, you know, expect it kind of being a little bit lazy as well, like not really having the energy to learn, or like thinking I couldn't do it. But what has really been cool in those situations has been to be with males that also couldn't do it, because then it was like, okay, but then who's supposed to do it? And that's kind of where you have to then step over the gender roles or start transcending them. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the female stereotype, the female gender role. So we said that the males are, not allowed to show emotions. They're not allowed to express how they feel. Would you say that how is it for the female? So
Well,
let's start with you.
And say again.
I just said, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, in a lot of aspects, it is the opposite. So where men should be keeping their emotions to themselves, females are expected to be pretty much sharing everything all the time with everyone, and having friends that they're always going to for advice and sharing their feelings and talking about things and talking and talking and talking and talking. Where men like mechanical toys, females would like nature and fashion and beauty and
Relationships.
animals. Yeah, relationships. Where men are expected to be big and strong, females are expected to be meek and soft and gentle and kind and have soft skin and soft hair and have a soft nature and
Also, where men are expected to be violent, women are expected to be quite passive and submissive to a fact.
Yeah.
Very gentle in their nature to other beings.
then you've got where men, like we've already discussed, where men are the providers, women are more the homekeepers. They look after the children, they do the cooking and the cleaning, and they do gardening, and they like flowers and pretty things. So those are some ponies. Those are some very, very general stereotypes.
So Maite, how have you experienced some of these stereotypes in your relationships and in general as a female, as being a female?
Well, for one, I came from the idea that, this is how it's supposed to be. Like we discussed the role of the man, of the male, and I figured that's the kind of person I need to find. And I have to be the woman, and I have to fulfill all of these roles. So I would go and look for a guy that was a male, that was strong and wouldn't talk about his feelings and was conflicted and all those things. And then, I'm going to give an example of something that happened with my first boyfriend. And, I found a guy who fit all the descriptions. And then we were on holiday and we were hiking and came by this little tiny stream of a river. He was like, "Come, I will pick you up and I will carry you over the water." And I just got so freaked out because I was like, I can walk over it myself. It's not even deep. My ankles will get wet maybe. And I just got so upset that all he was seeing was a weak little female that has to be carried by the man and needs to apparently be saved from the water, as I'm totally incapable of doing anything. And I realized, oh man, but this is what I asked for. This is what I was looking for, but it's not really what I want. So yeah, it's not nice to have people look at you as being a woman and thinking that all you're good for is cooking, cleaning, taking care of things, being passive, nodding your head yes, talking to your friends and gossiping, going shopping, and looking pretty. That's it's not nice, and it's the same for men. I can imagine. Many people think that you're just like the Hulk, and you're empty inside.
Yeah, and it's these like you're allowed to only like sports and cars and violent movies, kind of. If we're like really if we're very generalizing, that's that's just like three things in an entire world full of things that could interest you, right? Or like shopping, or for the woman, it's so restrictive. So LJ, how have you experienced this? The limitations of the female gender role, is that something that you've seen also in your life?
Well, in terms of for me myself, not really sure at all.
No, we haven't really done that.
Yeah,
Much.
Yeah, well, LJ grew up in a relatively different kind of environment where
Yeah.
he wasn't so much um, exposed to that much of meeting different people in terms of um, what most people experience. He and I had relatively similar lives where we we didn't experience a lot of the general kinds of experiences. So um, he didn't see all of the kinds of crazy that people can be in person.
and if I did have any experiences with it, it would usually be by visiting friends and so on. And then it was usually, come to think of it, there was a few times where I would go sleep over with friends, and it was always where the father would be sitting at a couch watching sports or something, usually sports, watching the rugby game on Saturday, and the mother would be busy cooking or cleaning, and she would be washing the dishes. And if I had a problem, I go to the mother because the father doesn't speak. He sits there, he drinks beer, and he watches sports.
There you go. Yeah.
It's the most vivid memory I have of it. It's basically the most experience I've had with it. Seeing that and being very confused by it because it wasn't what I had experienced in my own life. Because my mother worked and my father also worked, and they were always there to talk to if I needed someone to talk to. So,
So we could say that to a certain extent, you guys, because Cerise and LJ are siblings, just in case you didn't know, but that you guys kind of grew up in an environment where, some of the people had to a certain extent already started transcending the gender roles. And so they weren't really living in that, you could say, matrix to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of what we saw was from a distance in terms of we saw it happening in our friends' lives, and we saw it happening on TV and around us in school and things like that. But in our lives personally, our parents weren't like that. We weren't like that. We didn't have a lot of contact with the rest of our family because of the distance between us. So it was more as a point of observing how other people were living and comparing it to our lives where we weren't really living that, at least not to the same degree. And it's quite interesting how much more you're able to see when you're not so personally affected by whatever it is that you're seeing. When you don't have those, let's say it, the emotional experiences and the baggage that's kind of tainting your perception, you can see things relatively clearly because you haven't formed belief systems about them. You haven't formed opinions that you are valuing and trying to hold on to. But anyway, we're digressing. So let's get back onto the female.
Yeah, so anything else that you see in relation to the female and how it can be limiting?
well, I suppose also the point of, for me, I took over, I enjoyed doing most of the cleanings in terms of our relationship. I enjoyed taking the laundry, and I did the room cleaning because I also had more time for it for a long time. So in terms of the cleaning, in terms of the gender roles, I enjoyed doing it, so I did it, and I had the time to do it. So I did it. It wasn't because of the fact that she's a woman that I tried to force her into it. Because I mean that's what people would expect. It never made sense to me. It's just laundry needs to be done, so I did it.
Yeah, this is a really cool point, and which is also what I wanted to talk to you guys about now, which is how to then transcend the gender roles, or like whether you are in a relationship, if you're not in a relationship, you can still start working with it, just for yourself. And one thing that my partner and I, for example, did was also that because the thing is that we came from a starting point of saying that we want to be able to live as equals. So even though we hadn't yet completely transcended the gender roles, we did have the common goal. So, so I suppose that makes it easier. So we could quite easily come to an agreement of, for example, dividing the cleaning between us, and then dividing it in such a way that, we first looked at, what do you prefer doing? What do I prefer doing? And then it happened to turn out so that, we preferred opposites. I prefer doing the laundry and cleaning the bathroom, and he prefers doing the vacuuming, for example. So that was perfect, right? But I would say that even in a so-called normal relationship, you can do this in terms of showing the common sense of saying, we both have so much time in the day, and we're both sharing this living space. So how can we divide it in a way that is best for both of us, where we both participate? What would you guys say to this? Was kind of like in relation to cleaning, but do you guys have any other examples of how, we haven't talked about sexuality, for example, how one can begin sort of deschooling oneself from these gender roles and begin transcending them?
Well, gender roles are basically based in self-definition. So the first thing is it always comes back to yourself. You have to be willing, and you need to want to investigate and change those points within yourself. So if you have lived in such a way that you've defined yourself according to specific gender roles, then you have to at least be willing to see what you've been doing, why you've been doing it, and be willing to change it. So, for example, if you're a female and you've defined yourself as being, let's take the example of being the man should always take care of you, and you are very minimally responsible for your life and your finances and all of those things. It's up to you to be the change in that aspect. You need to then be willing to take on more responsibilities in your life. And once that willingness is there, then comes the point of sharing and discussing and creating agreements with your partner to say, look, I've seen this within myself. This is what I would like to change. This is how I would like to change it. I'd like to be more involved in these aspects, and I would like you to be more involved in those aspects. With relationships, always the most important thing is communication, developing a clear communication and a way in which you can both come to agreements together preferably without having to go through a big conflict.
Let me just jump in and say that I think it was the previous 2 hangouts we did was exactly on communication. So you can check out the playlist in the YouTube, our YouTube channel, if you want to learn more about communication. Sorry, go ahead, Cerise.
Okay, so what was I saying?
Sorry. Well, you're talking about communication.
Okay, well, so sometimes, especially in the beginning, you are going to have conflicts with your partner. When you're both trying to find your feet, you're both trying to figure out what it is that you want and trying to figure out how to effectively communicate with each other. It is possible that you're going to go through some conflicts. But as long as your common goal is to reach a point of equality, to reach a point of harmony in your living together and agreement, as long as those are your goals and you keep your focus there and your focus on solutions and reaching your goals, then you will continue to change those conflicts and create the life that you want together. And that's essentially it. It's about what do you want to create together? Who do you want to be with in your creation? How are you going to support your partner, and how are they going to support you? So in any situation in life, for any person, the most important thing is that they are willing to get to wherever it is that they want to go. They have to be willing to make the changes, because it's always up to each one of us to make the changes that we want to live in our lives.
So, Mites and LJ, do you have any examples either from your relationship or from past relationships where you've worked with the point of transcending a limiting gender role that either you had or that you saw that your partner was living out?
Not like specifically in our relationship. I mean, one of the reasons why I was, when I met LJ, why I was interested in him was because he wasn't your typical male. He had quite a lot of like what I would call then like female characteristics. I was talking a lot, was very expressive, would give hugs, those types of things which you don't generally expect from a guy. So already from the beginning, we didn't define it as you're the girl and I'm the man, and we'll each play our roles. And that's what I liked about it, because in my previous relationships, I realized I don't like being the girl or the woman. And I also didn't feel, or I felt I couldn't identify with all these roles. I didn't feel like a weakling. I didn't feel like emotional all the time. I didn't feel like gossiping with friends and those types of things. So it was always a point of constriction for me. So I liked that from the beginning. It was more like, I'm me, you're you. You have certain strengths and weaknesses. I have certain strengths and weaknesses. And, we just work with individual points. Never making it about gender or, I mean, there will be points that come up that is more typical for males and that are more typical for females. Like for me, being controlling, wanting to mother things. That was a big point for me. But I mean, from the beginning, I tried to do this with LJ. I would go, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And I would kind of want to pat him and make sure I'm okay. And he would just go, "Yeah, I'm okay. Are you okay? Why do you keep asking me if I'm okay? Stop doing that. You're not my mother." Bam, done. I mean, there wasn't much of a way for me to develop all those roles. Not accepted.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was always a matter in terms of any physical roles. It was a matter of who had time, not who's supposed to be doing it. Laundry or dishes or cleaning in general. It's just we'd either do it together or who has time this week to do cleaning. Who has time now? And we'll make an arrangement. It was never a matter of you should be doing this.
Yeah, because sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I actually do have an example from my life to share in this debate.
Cool, I'm looking forward to hearing it.
So in my agreement with Dalis, there was a period of time where I was doing the cleaning work because he had been ill with a thyroid problem. And as he started getting better, my life started becoming busier. And I couldn't get to all of the things that I was getting to before. And he was now starting to develop the physical strength to start, doing things again, to start going out, walking around, because he was pretty weak in terms of that. He spent most of the time either sitting or lying down because he was lethargic. So as he was getting stronger and I was getting busier, we were seeing more and more how our living situation and our living agreement at that point in time was not working. And I started kind of letting him know, look, I'm not getting to this stuff. Can you start helping out? And I mean, he's not here to share his experience of this, but he did have to walk through some resistance towards this because he never had to do something like that before. He'd never had to clean before. It was always someone else doing it for him. And now he had to start learning how to clean, which was actually, if you've never cleaned before in your life, you don't know how to do it. And he had to learn how to clean. And slowly but surely, he started stepping in more and doing more of the things that I didn't have time for anymore. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. It was something that we did have a few arguments about. And it was something that he he took little steps at a time, and it went from just sweeping to then sweeping and mopping, and then taking the initiative to do a few other things as well, and it gradually built up to a point where he took over and I was able to focus on all of the other things that I needed to do. And his experience of resistance towards it diminished the more he took on that role of responsibility, seeing the practicality of he now has the physical strength as well as the time to do these things where I do not have the time. And he took that responsibility on and he walked it. It was a process, but that was the end result.
Yeah, this is something that that we faced as well, and it's interesting how you say this point with like how he's never had to do any of this, and I think that's somehow for at least some of us, like it's kind of like we as females are better prepared when we come into adult life, either because there's already an inclination within us to do it, or because we've somehow learned or picked up on, and it's quite a shame that for a lot of males, that it's just not, it has to, you have to start over from scratch. And a really interesting point that I've seen from my relationship is because we generally have quite a clear agreement, but then sometimes there comes in these points like of resistance that are so specifically gender based. And in our case, it specifically has to do with animals that pee or poo or vomit. So as soon as that happens, my partner will say, "Oh, the animal vomited." And then it's just assumed that I have to go and clean it up because it's kind of my animal, which it isn't. We have a complete equal agreement on the animals that we have. So, but it's really interesting because, of course, I recall that from, all these movies where the male will go like, "Oh, the baby has pooped. You have to clean it up." But it's really cool to be able to now just laugh at it and go, "Hey, you're not getting away with that." And we have to be together in this. And like you said, LJ, that it's really a matter of looking at it practically, like who has time, or who's busy with something else, or whatever. Like you look at it practically, and then because I think we also tend to use these gender roles against each other, in both ways. It can both be, like I'm the woman, I'm too weak for that. Where, for example, when we had to move into the new place, and we had to, like in the beginning, carry some really heavy things, and I felt rather weak, and I just had to do it. And if I didn't do it, someone else would have even a bigger workload, and so I had to kind of push myself beyond what I thought I was capable of. And in doing that, I realized that I was much stronger than I thought. And, that is something that I think is very important, for example, for females, and reversely with males, to expand in areas of compassion and attention. But you have to push through that initial resistance. And then another point that I also wanted to share in that regard was, and that was quite a more like a deep point. So that had to do with in discussions with my partner, where I would have the tendency to very easily back down and just say, "Okay, then we do it the way that you want to, and I fold," like that. And I would really mean it, but of course I was kind of trying and manipulate him into feeling bad for me. And I was feeling, that he was so like, "This is how it is, and this is how it's gonna be." And I was like, okay, I didn't have that, you could say, ability to direct the discussion and bring points to the table. And so that has been a really cool point to learn, that I can use in any other area of my life as well, to be able to also take like difficult discussions and walk a person through what I see as relevant, without being intimidated. So anything else that you guys would like to share in relation to transcending gender roles?
Well, a similar point in terms of talking and standing on the ground. It was something also that happened with Maita in the beginning, where she tended to want to just let me do anything. I'd be like, no, that's your input. I'm not going to do this until you talk to me too. Come on. And then eventually it got to the point where we both stood our ground, so we'd both be like, now we're going to do it my way. But both of us would do it. But in the beginning, it was immediately, even if I was asking her, she would try and defer to me and let me make the choice. And I was like, no, bloody ways. No. We're choosing together. That's the only way this is going to work. So that's how we the points from there.
Yeah, because that can also cause like a lot of, resentment and then you're again, like Maita was saying earlier, then you're the one that's responsible because you're the one that made the decision. So that's quite a clever way to get out of responsibility. I didn't do anything. I'm just a woman. What do I know? Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left. So let's talk a little bit about what we call masculine and feminine expression. And Cerise, how is that different from gender roles?
Well, let's put it in these terms. Gender roles will be more like stereotypes, which is what we expect of each other simply because of our physical, because of our bodies, or because of what genders we were assigned during our developmental phases of our bodies. So, as we've discussed, a lot of examples of gender roles, of what we expect from each other, the difference between that and masculine and feminine expression is that, let's say that, let me first make it clear that masculine and feminine expressions are simply labels. It doesn't mean that masculine expressions are exclusive to men and feminine expressions are exclusive to females, or that they define in any way the gender of a person. It is simply a label that we use in order to understand each other and communicate effectively. Communicate effectively always comes down to, do you both understand each other 100%? Okay, so masculine expression, for example, would be, let's take the more experiences of strength, perseverance, pushing,
Aggression.
Stability.
Yeah, let's keep the focus more on practical points rather than going towards the emotional. So, courage.
Honor.
What did you say? Honor?
Honor. Let's say protection. Standing as that point of protection. So it would be a lot of. It does involve a lot of the aspects that you see in gender roles, though that doesn't mean that only men should have these expressions. A female can equally embody any one of these expressions, any one of the masculine expressions, simply because of who she is, who she would like to be, and the points that she sees she's able to stand as. I mean, that goes either way. So then let's look at some feminine expressions. Feminine expressions would be more gentleness, sharing, caring, openness, maybe even you could put like artistic expression in there.
Flexibility, I would also say.
Yeah, flexibility, nurturing, softness,
Grace.
yeah. So any person can embody any of these expressions, and any person can have both sides of the scale. I mean, it's not about who you should be, it's about who you are and what exists within you, and who and what you would like to live.
But
So
couldn't we say that, how do I explain this? Like there is kind of that which you are leaning more towards, or that which
yeah,
is like,
absolutely.
and then, that the challenge then, or the process is then to both, actually embody that in a constructive way, and where it's actually who you are. Like, let's, for example, say that you're a female and you have lived the word grace, but in a gender role type stereotype way, where it's like you've gone into this, because everyone expected that you should be this pretty little girl, and you had to, always speak very softly, but that wasn't really how you would really speak. Like for you, grace would maybe be more like deep and crass. No, well, maybe not crass, but do you understand what I mean? So is that then how, we can work with these expressions? Like, what does that mean in terms of who we are?
Well, absolutely. I mean, everyone comes into this world with particular, let's call it expressions, or with
Signatures.
signatures or natures or whatever that is more dominant within them. So you have people who are naturally more artistic. You have people who are naturally more inclined towards physical things like dancing, or um, let's take another extreme of a very large man being very physically strong and capable to do physical labor. Those are the physical aspects, but you've also got people who come into the world who are extraordinarily compassionate and caring and kind and considerate to others, simply because that is the nature that they were born with, and through their environment and the people around them, that nature within them was nurtured one way or another to become a dominant expression within them. So on the one hand, yes, anyone has the potential to embody any expression if they choose it, though some of them will be more easy for you to access because of the signature of who you are, of your being. So yes, it'll be easier to express and live that which you were naturally born with, though it is not necessarily something that one must limit oneself to. If, let's say, you were not born with any artistic skills, like natural skills, practice, enough practice can get anyone to a point of at least being adept in something. And if you enjoy it, that's what counts. It's about finding the things that you enjoy and the things that you are
Passion.
yes, and also the things that you're good at. I mean, if we were to live in a more ideal world, people would be choosing careers where their natural skills lie, and where they will enjoy what they're doing, and they can really create their life within that path, and be happy and fulfilled and satisfied with what they're doing. I mean, that is the ideal that we would like to live. I mean, any person can say that. So it's all about finding out what it is that you would like to express, no matter what other people are, have defined you as, or say you should be. And in developing yourself in such a way that you can explore life, you can explore yourself, and focus and develop those things that you would like to do.
So, Maite, would you say that it's a point of then, like let's say, that we look at it in the context of a human being becoming whole, or realizing that they are whole, so to speak. And to do that, you kind of want to work with these expressions. And just to say, put it like very briefly, but is it then a point of, because that's what I was looking at, that you have kind of the parts of yourself that you've suppressed, like for a man, your emotional side, points that you thought you weren't allowed to live, for example, because of gender roles. And then you have aspects that are like twisted, like where it's been turned into something different, like the example I gave before with Grace. And then you would have the expressions that, you've never just even like imagine could be a part of you, like you said with taxes and stuff like that. So it's that like, how would you see this process of beginning to explore masculine and feminine expressions also in relation to gender roles?
Well, like Cerise said, first thing I would say is it's okay, if you're not a typical man and you're not a typical female. I mean, it's really not that important because every woman is different and every man is different. Yet somehow we kind of expect all women to do the same things and all men to do the same things. So it already doesn't make sense from the start. So just firstly to accept that it's fine. You don't have to live up to that idea and those gender roles and those norms. Rather, just start working with um, what what are your natural expressions. Because for me, um, there was a lot of expressions that I was very comfortable with in me that was actually more masculine, where I would throughout my life hide these things more because it was apparently inappropriate, and I had to be girlish or a feminine and things like that. So just first, I mean, and even what those expressions are. If you like to be decisive, if you're actually quite a stable person, if you enjoy taking point in something, putting yourself at the head of a project or things like that. There's a lot of women who enjoy those things, and then you know that inside yourself. I mean, as soon as you just ask yourself, what are those things that are naturally part of me that I kind of hid them or tried to obscure them or never allowed myself to live them because it seemed to be too male. It doesn't seem to fit in me because I'm supposed to be a woman. I mean, you'll know what those things are. We're actually quite aware of what we do throughout our lives, I mean, especially during our teenage years, it's almost like we do it quite deliberately and specifically. Like, okay, I'm going to present myself this way and that way. These things don't seem appropriate. Okay, I'm just going to hide them or obscure them. So to firstly already see what do you have a natural tendency towards, whether that's masculine or feminine, doesn't matter, and just embrace that. And from there, start to look at what else do you want to do? What do you want to expand towards? And most people will have already a balance of both male and feminine, well, what word do you use? Masculine and feminine expressions within you that are quite natural for you. But then again, once you've accepted both of those that are natural to you, then again, you can start expanding it. That's what you want to do. So yeah, I mean, firstly, to step away, make the shift from the gender role to the expression, then accept what you already have naturally. It's always been there. You kind of always known it's there, but you just kind of hit it, and then to expand more. Like, what other feminine expressions would I actually like to live, but I didn't have a natural tendency towards it, but I would kind of like to live it and just start playing with those. Like, I would like to be graceful, or I would like to be caring. And to learn how to do that, what does it mean to be caring? What does it mean to be graceful? How can you live those words as an expression? Where you don't look at,
Sorry, go ahead.
you don't look at, okay, to be caring means you have to have kids now, I have to be pregnant and I can take care of something. I mean, it's not what the word caring means. You look at it in a more, what does the word care mean as an expression where you can care for anyone and anything, whether it's an animal, whether it's your garden, whether it's anything. So, yeah, it's just step away from the ideas and the stereotypes of how these words apparently need to be lived.
Yeah, because what I was going to say is that I think it's also important in that process to look at, like, for example, the word care or grace, or for man, strength, that we have to first look at, well, how do I understand it now? And are there any of these forms of cultural programming, for example, that are sort of tainting or contaminating the way that I look at this word in such a way that if I were to try and live it, or if I were to live it out, it wouldn't actually be a real expression of who I am. It would be more like trying to be someone or something. And then maybe there are still, for example, it could be for a man, let's say if we take the word strength, and then well, strength is to I have to go and bodybuild, right? That's like that's what you come up with. And maybe your idea of that comes from the fact that you felt like what do you say, like a scrawny little kid when you were a boy and you were bullied. And so you have created this very skewed, polarized image of strength related to weakness in your mind, that then sort of clouds the way that you see the word. Where you can actually go to the, like, but a lot of bodybuilders do, where they actually compromise their physical body to get, to attain an expression or an impression that isn't really about who they are. So guys, do you have anything else to add to this point?
Yeah, that point of defining words is actually a very important point in this process. Um, exactly as you said, everyone has different definitions of different words, and a lot of the words do have generalized and stereotypical definitions, but that doesn't mean that your personal definition is completely the same as society's definition. So you need to look at how are you defining your current characteristics. What would you say that they are, and how do you define those words? And investigate whether your definitions of these characteristics, these expressions, are actually objective and practical definitions, because a lot of the time, the words that we are living are tainted, like we've been discussing, with personal experiences and societal belief systems and norms that have been imprinted on us. So we need to be the ones to deconstruct, okay, what is this word that I'm living currently? What memories and ideas are connected to it at the moment? Let me strip away those ideas and memories. What remains of this word? And is that something that I am willing to live? Is this a word that will contribute to creating a better world, to creating an expression of myself that I see as embodies integrity, or whatever it is? And redefine these words for yourself into living words that you can practically live, that will contribute to life as a whole, as well as to your own life, and that are not tainted by all of the emotional and memory baggage that we all tend to drag with us through our lives. Our words are so tainted and biased by our personal experiences and by the things that we've seen happen around us, that we are not really living for ourselves anymore. We're living according to everything that we've experienced and seen. And most of that, to be honest, is not good for us or for anything around us.
Yeah, I was looking at the example of the expression of vulnerability, which I find is actually one of the most powerful and strong expressions that we as females, or within, those of us who tend to lean towards the feminine expression, um, um, that we are like that we have an easier time sometimes to access that. And so that could be a form of strength that doesn't fall under how strength has traditionally been defined. And then if we then think of, oh, now I want to live strength, but we try and do it as others have done it, we might miss this dimension of vulnerability as strength, for example.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that. So guys, we only have a minute left. So let's start with you, LJ. I would like to ask you if you have any suggestions or tips for anyone out there watching who either feels limited by the gender, like feeling like they have, like if you want to take it from the perspective of the male, how they can start working with these limitations and then also explore their expression as masculine or feminine or both.
Well, I mean, the simplest point to do is to stop trying to define yourself by what other people expect of you. Look at yourself and look at what you enjoy and what works with you, what you can work with, and what you are more prone to be and do. Work with that and expand that. Don't act upon the fact of what other people expect you to do. Um, and just basically stop judging yourself from that perspective.
Cool. And Maite, do you have any tips or suggestions if you want to look at it from the female perspective?
Well, this is more for both, but I suppose your relationship is like a great like training ground if you want. If you're not comfortable, like say, let's take the example of the male. You want to kind of learn how to get in touch with your emotions and to be able to speak openly about it. Doesn't mean you have to start, don't go to your neighbor and start talking about everything you're feeling. You can start with your partner. Same for women. If you want to practice, let's say, making decisions, you can ask your partner to help you. It's like use your relationship as a training ground. And so it's not like you have to go out there immediately going against all the norms in society. So you can practice these expressions, like what Cerise also was explaining, where you take a word, you strip it down, you see what expression is left, what you want to live, what you want to stand by. And first practice it just with your partner in your agreement. And then slowly, once you're comfortable with it, once you're actually living the word as an expression of yourself, then you can start expanding it towards other people as well. Yeah, it's not like a all or nothing, like a sudden change, like flip a switch and be more feminine or be more masculine. It's a gentle process, and I think relationships are the perfect place to practice it. And you can even tell your partner, like, look, I want to practice being more vulnerable, and then you can ask your partner, say, this is what I've seen as a definition I want to live, and can you help me? Can you assist me? I see that these are the things I have difficulty with still. Can you in those moments just help me by doing this? Just make it a together process. Yeah.
Cool. And any last words from you, Cerise?
For now, I think we've covered about as much as time has allowed. So, no.
Okay. Yeah, we have also reached the end of our scheduled time here. So everyone, thank you so much for watching and viewing. And we will be back in a month to discuss another interesting point in relation to relationships. So thank you so much for being here, Maite, LJ, and Cerise. And we will be back next month. And we will be back, of course, on Thursday for the DIP Hangout and on Friday for the movie Hangout, if all pans out as it should. Okay. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.